Hello, everybody. My name is Al, and you've been following my channel, my travel blog about what it takes to move to another country. Here I am with Andrew Vasquez again. Has been a wonderful guest, wonderful supporter of our channel. He is considering moving to the Philippines, but he's still in the United States. So, Andrew, tell us what brought you to that point that you're wondering if the United States is just not your favorite place in the world anymore, and why Philippines?
Yeah, Al, thanks for having me on again. So I want to go ahead and set the record straight. I still love the United States. The United States is my home. It's always going to hold a very special place in my heart. At the same time, I also understand that the United States, in many areas and in many cases, is becoming socially unstable. There is violence on the rise. We've seen a number of events just within the last 6 months that indicates this. So the reason why I'm still here is because, just like many members of our audience, I'm still making a living here in the United States. And so I have a plan. I've made preparations with your help, with your consultation, with your services, with your team, to go ahead and leave the United States at a moment's notice if I should need to. It's part of my emergency preparedness plan. It's part of what I do. But my job still requires me to be physically here in person on site. I work in sales. I work as a consultant. I work with people, getting them the training and the resources that they need to go ahead and make career changes. So a lot of what I do takes place just due to the model and the company that I work for. It takes place in person. So that's probably a story that many of our viewers here today can relate to. They're thinking about moving, but they have responsibilities and they have obligations in their home country that are keeping them put right now. We're here to help work with these people. We're here to work with these prospective clients in terms of getting a plan together for the future, to leave temporarily or to leave permanently if they should desire that.
Well, and you see, a lot of people had their taste of freedom during the pandemic. That when I became a digital nomad, it was still 2019. I became a digital nomad before it was cool, as they say. And most of the people I knew when I came to Mexico from the United States were senior citizens. They were retirees. They were living after social security checks. I, on the other hand, was already running a digital nomad business. I was already a young man with an online business. And you got to wonder, and now that the pandemic is done with, a lot of people have to go back to their real jobs. And there is still a critical and a fundamental question. Is the digital nomad lifestyle still relevant for most people? Does it make sense now that we're past the pandemic, past the working from home phase? What are we supposed to do about that?
Well, Al, this is actually a great question that you bring up. It's a question that's come up time and time again as we've been working with the clients in terms of their expatriation goals and their desires. What I can tell you is this. I was working in my specific career field. Again, to reiterate, I work with people in getting them the training that they need to get certified in specific lines of work so that they can find certain jobs. A part of that entails getting them the training and the qualifications that they need to take certain jobs that can be or have the potential to be remote jobs. Think about IT specialists, IT managers for big corporations. You're on a computer all day. You work for a specific company that may be operating in the United States, but you yourself are not typically required to come into the office to perform those duties. I work with a number of clients in that regard in my day job that are doing just that. They have a job with a company based in a host nation, but they are living in a completely different section of the world. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about whether or not being a digital nomad is still relevant here post-pandemic, I think it absolutely is. Are we going to see as many people are we going to see the same numbers as we saw during the height of the pandemic? I don't know. What I can tell you is that the world is changing. And if you find yourself in a position where you have the ability to make your money online, to make your money in a remote fashion, whether that be through entrepreneurship and or just working a remote job, if you are concerned about the buying power of your dollar, if you are not tied to a geographic location in your host nation, considering expatriation might be for you.
Well, it's especially relevant now that Donald Trump was elected president of the United States, and he wants to impose a lot of tariffs on foreign goods. That's going to make life more expensive in the US. But wait, that's going to make the dollar much more scarce abroad, which will make it more valuable. So if and only if you can get abroad, you're going to get much richer. But if you stay in the United States, well, you're going to see your buying power shrink all the much more with every passing day that Donald Trump passes his wonderful tariff policy.
So that's a question that comes up quite a bit when we're talking with clients about moving overseas and stretching out their retirement dollars. So you do a lot of work, Al, with a lot of people that are approaching retirement or they've been retired for a few years already. They're living off of a social security check. They're living off of a fixed income, whether that's in the form of a pension or a dividend payment. They're living off of their retirement funding. Whatever the case may be, they're looking to go ahead and relocate to a different nation and to preserve the future buying power of their dollar. As we look at everything that's taken place here in the U.S., we're seeing record amounts of inflation. Just earlier today, I was reading an article on the car repossession rates that have gone through the roof here in the U.S. I don't know how familiar you are with that, but for members of this audience that are not aware, many people bought vehicles during the height of the pandemic, and they paid egregious prices for these vehicles, well over MSRP. Now that inflation has caught up with everybody, people that were able to make those car payments a few years ago are not able to make them anymore. Why? Because their rent for their apartment, their basic living necessities has gone up over $1,000 a month. So a payment for a vehicle that was very doable just a few years ago is now outside of the realm of possibility for so many people. Inflation is really doing a number on many people here in the United States. And for many people, their wages are simply not going to keep up with the pace of inflation. So if you find yourself in a position where you are stuck between a rock and a hard place, or if you're just being mindful of the future and you're looking ahead, expatriation may be something that you were at least wanting to consider moving forward.
Well, I'll tell you this. In 2019, when I came to Mexico as a digital nomad, as a young man, I was 31, all these senior citizens that I met were looking at me like I was the oddball, the weird animal here. The hell? How is it possible that a young guy like you is here with us, reaping the benefits of having the US dollar in Mexico? Are you dealing drugs? But once they got to know me, they understood that I had an online business, but they had no idea what this was. But I promise you, every one of these wealthy senior citizens that I met in Mexico, by Mexican standards, now know what a digital nomad is. Now, that if you've done this during the pandemic, that you've had an online job or an online business, I promise you, you can get it again. It may not be as easy as it used to be, but it is definitely possible. So don't ever listen to anybody who tells you that, that time has passed, the pandemic is over, you'll never get an online job. No, that's stark nonsense. Forget about it. It's entirely possible to do what you did or what your friends did during the pandemic, making money online and living in a much cheaper country and getting much more respect. And respect is a wonderful thing. And this is something that we're lacking in the United States. There's so much disrespect, political polarization, rioting, attack on free speech, humiliation based on race, humiliation based on political ideology. Andrea, I imagine you have a lot of insight to offer on that topic, don't you? Respect used to be an American value, and it's not anymore, is it?
A lot of that, Al, is tied to values of previous generations. So when we talk about this concept of respect, that word meant something entirely different to my grandfather and to my father. Nowadays, in the United States, depending on which section of it that you live in, is becoming very uncivilized. to give your viewers an example of what it is that I'm talking about, again, we've covered this in a previous video, but the whole incident that took place in the New York City subways with lighting a poor person on fire and taking that person's life. How horrible is that? That wasn't something that we talked about or even heard about. Barbaric. That's a good word. In addition to that, the number of people that are being taken out due to things like road rage, something as silly as road rage, that's a very common occurrence now. And so it really begs the question, is this a decay of society? And if it is the decay of society, is this something that I am willing to tolerate in this area where I'm living simply because this is where I was born? Or am I ready, willing, and able to consider moving abroad where perhaps the social norms aren't like they are here? Now, so much has changed in the last 30 plus years, Al, that my hope is that things will get better, but if they don't, having a plan to get out is certainly something that I recommend people have.
Well, Andre, having known you for a little while, I can see why you like the Philippines. It's a much more structured, socially responsible, Christian, traditional place that respect matters so much more there. Now, a lot of Americans who go there may feel disrespected because of simple cultural misunderstanding. But believe me, once you get to know that culture, you're going to find much more modesty, humility, decency, and mutual respect in a country like the Philippines or Paraguay, where I am now, than you will just about anywhere in the United States.
And Al, for members of this audience that haven't really had a meeting with you yet, being able to navigate those social misunderstandings, getting a chance to go ahead and sit down with your team and talk about things, cultural customs that they need to be aware of in preparation to visiting these places or permanently relocating to these places. That's a service that you provide. Can you tell our viewers a little bit more about that?
Well, you see that the English language is what we call in Latin lingua franca, the official language of the world. And as Americans, as Britons, as Australians, as Canadians, we all may feel like that everybody's got to conform to our values. In the English language, we like to be direct, simple, to the point, say what we mean and mean what we say and expect everybody to understand that. And when we come to another country, this just causes frustration, annoyance, confusion, irritation. There are just so many cultural nuances that you got to understand. It's something that may be clear and obvious to you. It's totally confusing and counterintuitive to somebody else. Now, as somebody who speaks 4 languages, who has lived in 8 different countries, I can fill you in on these cultural nuances. I can tell you what common mistakes Americans and English speakers make. Places like Mexico, Spain, the Philippines, Brazil, where context and understanding the culture is everything. Like, you cannot learn Portuguese or Spanish with ChatGPT. You cannot learn that with Google Translate. You cannot translate every word in English to Portuguese or Spanish or any other language in these cultures and expect to be understood. No, you're just going to frustrate people. You've got to have some basic human insight into how these cultures are and what these people are like. And the only way you get that is if you spend some time living there. And that's what I'm here for. You see, you guys are smart people. That's why you're watching this channel. This is not a channel for stupid people, but there's only so much that you can learn on the internet. You need some actual human guidance. And this is why I'm offering a free consultation. 30 minutes, book it here and then the link below this video, and you got my time and you got my undivided attention, unconditionally.
Al, I think that paints a very clear picture about the next steps, the next call to action. So if you have questions about anything that pertains to expatriation, please go ahead and submit those questions either by clicking on the description below and getting in contact with Al directly, or by posting those in the comments section below. We're going to do our best to offer this Expat Hour series at least once per week to go ahead and talk about any and all topics that are relevant to you all as the audience. In addition to that, we're going to be on occasion bringing in guests that have different expertise in different topic areas that are relevant to expatriation. So we ask that you stay tuned because there is more to come. Al, thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrew. We'll be in touch. Thanks to everybody for your attention, and you'll be hearing from us soon. And don't forget, there is a 30-minute free consultation available. Just look at the link below, and we'll be right with you. Again, we appreciate your time and attention. Bye-bye.